Xenoblade Chronicles X has been one of my most anticipated Wii U games for a while, and after waiting nearly 3 years since the game's initial announcement, the time has finally arrived for us to rummage through the hostile world of Mira. Courtesy of the wonderful folks over at Nintendo, they were kind enough to send over an early copy of the game for me to review, and after clocking in over 50 hours in this dense RPG, I now have a pretty clear understanding of what Chronicles X is all about. This is one of the most expansive and complex games on the Wii U currently, and while it may have some noteworthy flaws here and there, Xenoblade Chronicles X is something RPG enthusiasts will not want to miss. First off, even though the names of the games are similar, you don't have to play the original Xenoblade Chronicles to understand what is going on in Chronicles X. It's more of a spiritual successor with its own isolated story, and it has no bearing on what happened to Shulk and his crew in the original game. You'll probably find Easter eggs referencing the game, but that's about it. If you just want to jump into Chronicles X without touching the original, you'll be all hunky-dory. Speaking of the story though, the game starts with you waking up in a life pod on an unknown and breathtaking planet called Mira. How did you end up on the planet? Well, a spaceship with the remnants of humanity escaped the destruction of Earth from a formidable alien race and crash landed there. And it's your job as a member of the military organization known as Blade to traverse the planet and find the oh so precious life hold, because the fate of humanity depends on it. While I don't think the story was as strong as the one in Xenoblade Chronicles, it still kept my interest, namely due to the few plot twists. The characters that carry the story are also not that interesting, save for a couple, and it doesn't help that the character you create and play as is a silent protagonist who just stands there and nods his head. You do make textual statements, but you're kind of just a lifeless character. There was also a particular long-running joke made between teammates that wears thin after a while, since they regurgitate the joke over and over again. It's fine the first few times, but after about the 10th time, it gets a little old. Even so, the story is what propels you to explore the ginormous world of Mira. And when I say ginormous, I mean the scope and density of the planet is one of the biggest I've personally seen in a video game. It even rivals that of Skyrim. It's insanely fun exploring the uncharted territories of the 5 regions of Mira, all in a seamless open world that looks visually stunning. Your curiosity will push you to see what every nook and cranny is hiding. What could possibly be at the top of those jagged mountains? What will I find in these hidden deep caverns? And how in the world am I going to take down these towering behemoths that are the size of a 50-story building? Don't just run past and don't look back, don't make eye contact! There's not an inch of land that goes to waste. There's always something to find and encounter, including the myriads of neat-looking monsters that come in all shapes and sizes. Monolith Soft did an amazingly swell job at making something that feels like a living, breathing world teeming with adventure. I was also really impressed with the loading times in Chronicles X, as they are relatively snappy for such a monstrous game. I guess to cut down on loading times, they kinda just drop you in a bit early, so not everything will be fully loaded by the time you start walking around. It will take a few more seconds for everything to properly load up, such as certain textures and NPCs. Even so, the quick loading times made fast traveling around Mira feel not so much like a chore, especially when it came to side quests that prompt you to go to multiple places that are scattered about. On the other hand, the soundtrack in Xenoblade Chronicles X is kind of all over the board in terms of style. It includes such things as hip-hop, J-pop, and more bombastic or atmospheric arrangements when exploring the overworld. At first, I wasn't a big fan of the music, and that mainly has to do with the fact that the place you start in plays the hip-hop music. Nevertheless, the more I played the game and heard the variety of music tracks, the more I enjoyed the soundtrack, because it's actually really well done. Chronicles X also has quite a few vocal tracks to flesh things out, and the great majority of them I enjoyed. It's really great hearing a vocal track kick in when going up against one of the boss enemies, as it gives those encounters a more grandiose feeling, so to say. If there was one problem I had with the soundtrack, it would be that it plays way too loud during cutscenes. Sometimes I couldn't even hear the characters talking because the music was blaring, so it would have been a lot better if they lowered the volume a bit. I tried to fix it myself, but I couldn't find a volume slider in the game's settings. Maybe it's there and I'm just blind. I wouldn't put it past me. Now, when you jump into Chronicles X, you are going to encounter a humongous learning curve, and that mainly has to do with the fact that the game doesn't do a very good job at explaining the deep and intricate mechanics to you. If you thought Monster Hunter was a tough cookie to get into, then be prepared for Xenoblade Chronicles X, because it throws a lot of features at you. And this is even coming from someone who played Xenoblade Chronicles 3D and knows how the battle system works. Yes, I had trouble understanding the game, and even after plugging away over 50 hours into Chronicles X, I still haven't wrapped my head around every feature. It's tough to get through in the beginning, but I stuck with it and slowly but surely started to learn what certain mechanics were meant for. It just takes a bit of extra time. and I'm so glad I pushed through, because Chronicles X is a rewarding game that is a blast to play. It's just very deep and complicated, so you best be prepared. The battle system is a glorious one, taking advantage of real-time combat sprinkled with some RPG goodness. Each character comes equipped with a ranged weapon, melee weapon, special offensive and defensive abilities called arts, and more, making for a complex and ultimately engaging battle system that never really gets old. You can even change your character class at will, bringing with it new arts to take advantage of, and a new way to take down monsters. It really caters to the player, allowing you to customize how you want to play. If you've experienced the original Xenoblade Chronicles though, then you should feel right at home with the battle system in Chronicles X, as they are very similar. Here, they just added extra features and polish to make it even better, such as now being able to use both ranged and melee weapons. When it came to battles though, I did find myself fighting with the lock-on mechanic quite a bit, as it was not exactly smooth. It would take multiple taps from the lock-on button until the game finally got the hint that I wanted to switch between targets, which can be downright frustrating at times. It worked perfectly fine in Chronicles 3D, so I have no idea what went wrong here. It just really liked ignoring me. Now, in between the game's main story missions, you'll no doubt be plowing through the countless side quests for that extra moolah and experience. While some are totally fine, I did find the gathering quest to be quite tedious and annoying. You have to find specific items somewhere on Mira, but the problem is, it only tells you which region to find them. And considering the size of these regions, you can see why the gathering quest would get laborious and exhausting. I wish they zeroed in a bit more on where the materials can be found, instead of vaguely telling us to look over an entire region. It would have saved numerous minutes of aimless exploring, and it honestly made me not want to do the gathering quest because I didn't want to waste my time. On a positive note, Chronicles X does fix the problems I had with the original Xenoblade Chronicles, namely the speed at which characters move and comparing the stats of equipment you obtain. There is now a designated run button which speeds things up considerably, and you can also jump extremely high, which again factors into your efficiency in getting to places as quickly as possible. It's also much easier now to compare the stats between the equipment you have on and the equipment you want to buy or find from fallen enemies. All the stats and buffs applied to each piece of equipment is clearly shown, unlike Chronicles 3D, so you can better tell which tool is the cream of the crop. So, going into Chronicles X, these tweaks were definitely a plus. Now, just when you think you've seen everything Xenoblade Chronicles X has to offer, halfway into your grand adventure, a whole new way to experience the game opens up. And that comes in the form of Skells. These expensive and hulking robotic suits of armor essentially allow you to embrace your inner transformer. They open up a whole new branch for battles, as they have their very own unique set of arts to take advantage of. Plus, with the capability of flight, you can explore Mirror like never before, reaching areas you couldn't otherwise get to. The Skells were a really awesome inclusion, as it freshens up the game halfway through, so you're not stuck with the same combat throughout the entire game. And it also helps that you can zip around the terrain like a jackrabbit to get to places in a split second. Anything to speed up the gameplay is always yum yum in my book. Anyways, if you want a game with a grand adventure that you can easily sink in over 100 hours, Xenoblade Chronicles X is the game for you. I've spent over 50 hours playing the game, and there's still plenty of side content to take on. Chronicles X is a must-have Wii U game, especially if you love RPGs, and the near 3-year wait for the game's release was totally worth it. Monolith Soft created an overall fantastic game that mushes together a visually stunning and dense world and a complex and engaging battle system that builds and improves upon what the original Xenoblade brought to the table. Chronicles X definitely doesn't come without its fair share of problems though, namely the very large learning curve and a story that is not exactly as epic as you were hoping it to be. The good thing is, those problems and other nitpicks don't stop Chronicles X from being a marvelous game, and there's nothing quite like it on the Wii U. So, in all, I found Xenoblade Chronicles X to be an amazing game. But that will bring us to the end of this review, and if you liked what you saw, please give this video a thumbs up, add it to your favorites, and all that good stuff. And I will talk to you later in the next video, guys. Bye!